It's 1900 Alpha Zulu time.
7 o'clock.
So thanks a lot for showing up, everybody. Oh, good. He's got my presentation. I hope you guys on the Zoom meeting can hear me speak because I'm just speaking out loud in the room. Hearing response.
Oh, that was a yes.
Okay.
If you can get a little more audio, it would be good.
Sounds right here is the mic.
This is the mic I'm using. Okay.
Good, that sounded good.
Okay. I don't want to pick it up and hold it, but I will if I need to. Anyway, I'm Bill, Alpha 4 Quebec, and for some reason they made me president, and I still am. So thanks everybody for showing up for the May 2022 CADXA meeting. Kind of as our tradition, I didn't think of a brag question to ask about. Anybody got any ideas? I think that's one of us. Anyway, why don't we go around the room and each of us introduce ourselves, and then we'll have the guys on the Zoom meeting introduce themselves, and then we'll start going through the agenda for the meeting. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Tom, N27R from Casa Grande.
I'm Thomas, November Echo 7 X-ray Phoenix.
Norm, N98E, Sun City.
Walt, NJ8G, Glendale.
Mike, N7MW.
Mike, K7I. K9R7.
Hello, N7MW.
Me, KY7M.
Area KC7CS.
Introduce yourself.
Marvin, I'm KI7BLU.
Who will be the speaker today also.
We're Gold K7BZ.
Okay. Other than Marvin, I presume you all are members. Anybody here who's not a member? Because I had a couple of people email me and ask about the meeting. Okay. Go ahead and all y'all on Zoom, go ahead and come off mute one at a time and introduce yourselves.
Israel K7HI Phoenix.
Mike, KC7B, Far North Phoenix.
Steve, K7SP, Phoenix.
Rick, W1 Hotel Zulu, Phoenix.
Bob, NA7RH in Scottsdale.
Dave, W0JKT, Phoenix.
Reinhardt, K7RGG in Ingrid.
Anybody we missed? Okay. Okay, so let's step through this. As soon as he brings up the share, regular share screen. If you can find all the right buttons. There we go. Okay, next slide. Okay, we just did our meet and greet, and so let's step through the next slide. Mike, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, it was a fairly slow month for the Treasury. We have 9581 and some change.
Oh, this is off, right?
92 cash flow. Recent expenses have been limited to room rental and badge fabrication and mailing them out. That's the only unrecorded expense at this point is the check we wrote for today's meeting. Cash in a few days. We got one more member with a late renewal. So we have 121 payments.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, one of the things we did several months ago is we donated money to the committee for the AZQSO party. And I think the rules were this plaque, we donated money to buy a plaque for the top DX competitor in the AZQSO party. So it turns out Oscar Mike 2 Victor Lima ended up winning it. That's a picture from his QRZ page. So he sent a thank you to the directors of the AZQSO party, so they forwarded it on to us. This is the Ham Radio Club meeting. Are you here for this?
I am here.
Okay, introduce yourselves.
Oh, hi, everybody. I'm John. I'm a newer ham. I got my ticket about a year ago. I still haven't been on the air yet, but I want to learn more about the DXing, and so that's why I came.
What's your call?
W7OCD, Whiskey 7 Oscar Charlie Beach. No.
Obsessive compulsive disorder. Yeah. Pull up a seat. We started just a few minutes before you showed up. We all walked around or went around the room, introduced ourselves. All the guys on the computer introduced themselves, and we're walking through the business meeting now.
Possible.
Okay, so I think it was kind of cool that you sent the thank you thing, so we know that our money's is going to something that people benefit from. DXCC total. Okay, this could turn into a couple of minutes or half an hour, but we've brought this up a couple of times. We have this long tradition, longer than I remember, of tracking at least quarterly the self-reported DXCC totals of all of the members for various modes and bands and stuff like that. It was last month or the month before, W07R talked a little bit about his spreadsheet. He does not want to do it. The guy who did it for several years doesn't want to do it. And we thought we had a volunteer, but it takes just a little bit of Excel skill, and he didn't feel he was up to it. So what they were doing is people would fill out a spreadsheet, merge it into the existing spreadsheet, convert that into a PDF, which you'd have on the website. So members could go to the website, pull it down, and see how they're doing compared with all their other fellow club members. This is a long tradition. It seems kind of disappointing to let it go, but if we can't find somebody to run it, we either have to find an alternative or drop the program. So if any of you know a little bit about Excel and would like to take it over, see me and W07R later. He's not here today. But anyway, one of the things that has been proposed is that we instead of doing it ourselves, we do everything on Club now. So he put together a presentation, about 6 or 7 slides, and we'll walk through here fairly quickly because I don't know much about him. He put it together, but he's not here to talk to them. But the suggestion is that we instead of doing the spreadsheet to the PDF and everybody sending their stuff in, just report it to Club Log, and anybody who wants to see it can go to the league on Club Log for CDXA. So basically, that's what I just said. We need somebody to take over ownership. So Club Log has leagues. So we would form the CADXA league. That's just their word for a subgroup. And you'd have to join Club Log, and I'm not a member of Club Log. It doesn't appeal to me, but a lot of people are. And then you join the CADXA league, which all members will immediately get approved to join. And then he goes through a few steps of how you access the report inside Club Log. And so let's step through that and see what we can say. So kind of an eye chart. Basically, the steps are available that makes it pretty simple to generate the report. I see call sign, I see Dan's across there, totals. So Club Log can do all that for us if there's an interest in doing it. See what other things.
Is there a fee for that?
No, it's
No,
first line, it's free.
free.
Is somebody over here about to say something? Somebody on the speaker have something to say?
He was just saying free.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, not everybody likes it or wants to do it, he said. He's got a couple examples there. Are there any more slides after that? Well, like Club Log, maybe you should step up and take over the quarterly report. Perfect. Okay, so anyway, so that's some thought. If you guys want to discuss this, if you like that idea, that's something we can pursue. Alternatively,
A whole bunch of us are already on Club Log club leagues for CADXA. It exists. It's already there.
Yeah. So,
There's 32 people signed up on Club Book.
right, and we've got 121 members. So we're 25% of the way there.
Does anybody know if that league page, is that copyrighted, or, I mean, could somebody just cut and paste that into
Into the website.
into something, into our own website, or?
I think you can. You can pull up the CXDA information now with people that are in there.
Yeah.
Well, there's like the search criteria, you can tell it, give me 2022 or last 12 months. Tell you my specific band, specific modes. And then, yeah, so here, this would be there's already
A bunch of 340s.
there's already 33 of us joined to the club. But like you can come up here and say, give me 2022 numbers, current and deleted, or
Yeah.
regenerate, and then this would be the.
I like that one.
And it's dynamic, so it's not even quarterly.
Can I,
It's easy to use, but I don't think it replaces what we have on our current website without some work.
well, yeah, we would drop the one on our current website or just archive it.
Yeah, well, it has different kind of information than that. So we need to think about it.
Okay, that's why I brought it up for discussion.
Really nice. Another thought I was thinking is if you could cut and paste that into say a text file, then if other people who didn't want to join Club Law but still wanted their totals posted, I would think you could just edit that in. But if they're not interested, most of them I don't think are all that interested anyway.
In order to be complete, either we have to get a large number of people to join Club Law and upload their own stuff, or we have to have somebody in charge of uploading all the stuff that people manually send in. The other thing I'm not sure about is I believe we're just self-reporting the QSOs or DX totals we know we have. We don't have to go back through our logs and find the 1976 Clipperton DXpedition, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it has to be a log type file, so you got to find it.
So I use the N3 FJP AC log, and it uploads automatically. I'm sure N1MM does. But you can also come here to
But if I'm
the upload and automatic or put a file in. It's here somewhere.
But judging from the gray hair in this room, I'd say more than half of the QSOs this club has made occurred before computers were available for logging.
It's the same as Logbook of the World, but you can, as long as you digitize them,
Yeah,
you can upload old records.
but if one knows that he has 212 countries on 40 CW, he just puts it on the spreadsheet and sends it in our current system. Under this system, is there a way to self-report that I have 212?
It should.
If one can report that without having to list the individual QSOs.
Because like I can go to my DXCC, so it tells me like pink is where I have it works. But yeah, like green I confirmed, W has worked, but not confirmed. So there's And it pulls a lot of that from all over the world too, I think. 'Cause I synchronize them.
Hey, Bill,
Sure.
this is Israel. I think, Club Log is a great thing to do. I'm there, and it's completely free. And you can also, if you are an LOTW, you can send your LOTW records to Club Log and vice versa. So there is a way to do that. So even if someone is at LOTW today and joins the Club Log, they don't have it to do manually. You can just transfer the files up there. And they have many tools. It's statistical tools, and you can compare yourself or your club, with other entities as well. But the best of all, we put all that data up, and it helps Club Log to get even better. It's completely free. You can download their files. You can play with the data, and it's all available.
That's what, I mean, here's something else too, is I'm a member of AOCC, so I'm also on their team. And so you upload once, but it automatically generates that data for however many different groups you might be a member of too.
So I'm sensing a lot of positive interest in this. Is there anybody that really likes the old-fashioned way of doing it that we have on our website?
I just think it gives you more, our old-fashioned way gives a view that you don't quite get with Club Log, but it's not broken out by the order of DXCC entities by band, like we have on the website. Maybe there's a way to do that, to download what's there and create something on our own website.
We might copy and paste it quarterly to the
Or
website.
just put a link on the website to go look at.
Yeah.
But I think there may be features or formats on the website, I think is what I heard you say.
Right.
Or the PDF that we post to the website that gives information that you don't readily see how to do it on Club Log. So we need to research that a little bit and figure out how to do it on Club Log, or just give up that feature.
I'm pretty sure you could find a way to download the information that's there and create what we do on our website. But
Got mixed mode, club members.
My vote would be for the old way. I've always enjoyed that, and being able to reference basically just what's in our club in order with work confirmed, whatever. So that would be my vote.
yeah, I don't. There are members that are not on Club Log, and
Yeah, there's my data. 20, 30.
So
Well, the old way also included like things like 5-man work bell zones, and your totals are there.
yes,
yeah.
yes, that was one that.
There's probably a lot of people on our spreadsheet that will never go on Club Log, so we lose a lot of people in the list by going to Club Log and dropping us entirely. So that, you guys are right, that is a disadvantage. But the entire reason we're holding this discussion is because somebody,
Actually, they're on Club Log whether they want to be or not, because it has everyone that reported the other end of your QSO as well. So you can go in there and find out what K5ML has done over the times, and he doesn't report anything to anybody. So it's you're in there whether you want to be or not, in terms of having a statistical presence there.
unless you voluntarily join the CADXA League, you won't appear on our league totals.
That's true.
Yeah, they wouldn't be on this list.
Okay. Any additional discussion you guys want on this topic?
There's one simple alternative.
Drop everything?
One simple alternative. That is, they get a text file. When you ask people, and spreadsheet. So it's very simple. Word dot, text dot, and somebody likes it, puts it, uploads it.
Are
I'm
you
sorry,
volunteering?
it's too simple.
Are you volunteering to do it?
Nobody else is, I will do it.
Actually, you saw how that was broken out by bands and so on. You have to go find it.
It's all there. And they're not going to be damaged.
That's the saving grace. Because you might only get two or three emails a quarter saying, here are my changes.
Yes.
But if you got 30 people submitted changes because it was a big key expedition, people got new numbers. It'd be an awful lot of work to find out.
Maybe, but it's still.
Plus, if you, I think, if you click on one of the bands, it'll sort it in terms of numbers. So
Oh,
you could sort it out into each band. That would be a little complicated, I think. To me, just what's there looks good.
even on 6 days.
So there's a 6 meters.
Yeah, you guys have been busy.
Who's at the top of this one? Okay, any additional discussion? Okay, let's close this issue and the board will discuss it later and maybe we'll have a volunteer to modify the text file quarterly, or maybe we'll all be on Club Log by next month. Okay, I don't believe there's anything new to report from the repeater committee. I don't believe there's anything new to report on the Visalia committee, but I actually forgot to ask Ned. And since he's not here, he'll have to report. They should be awarding a scholarship this month. We donated $1,000 before, I think. What we discussed at the last meeting, we may have discussed it here in the meeting, but is we'll make that scholarship winner an honorary member for the rest of this year and all of next year, just to get them a chance to join, to realize they've joined the club and maybe get new people in the club or exposure to other hams or so on. Any other club business? One of the things we talked about at the board meeting, is there any interest in this club doing a field day effort? Assuming we have a place to do field day where you don't have fire restrictions this summer. Is there any interest in doing that as a club? Don't all speak at once. It's kind of outside the realm of the specialty of this club, so that's why we haven't been doing much of that. Okay, and any other new business from the floor you guys want to discuss? Okay, next slide should be Tom. Oh no, presentation first, Tom Lutz. Okay. You guys want to take a break or you want to give your presentation first?
Let's take a break.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do it.
So. We'll start up here in a couple minutes. Thanks. If we could all gather back again, we're about ready to begin the presentation.
I think Ray's about to fall asleep.
I hope you guys on the Zoom meeting can hear us. Virgil managed to get Marvin Percha, who's a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, to come speak to us today. Normally May is our club picnic, and we thought an outdoor meeting with a presentation about weather would be absolutely perfect. But we couldn't get the picnic set up in time because of location stuff. But anyway, I'm glad you're here, Marvin, and look forward to your presentation. Thanks a lot.
Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, just one thing is I am a ham radio technician licensed KI7BLU. You may have heard me occasionally on the weekly nets. If you dial into those, that we, of course, the weekly weather nets, Skywarn nets that are hosted both by the South Mountain and by the Canal Peak transmitters. So I'll go ahead and start here. So, oh. There it is.
That's on my screen too.
Oh, there you are.
There you go. Finally. Okay.
Okay, well, good evening here. We're doing a program here in my presentation. So a couple of things about first of all, about the Skywarn program, the National Weather Service Skywarn program, which is kind of quite a long history of it. And then the other thing was we'll be going over the lower desert weather hazards here in South Central Arizona. So I'll go ahead and start, first of all, there's the Skywarn there. Go ahead. So in terms of my background, just a little bit about my background. I've been interested in weather since I've been at least 4 years old. I was born lived in Denver until I was age 6. I don't even remember this, I was so young, but I was really like excited when we had the South Platte River floods down there in the Denver area. I don't know if any of you guys are from Colorado and stuff, but the weather in Colorado is, as you put it mildly, is pretty interesting. One day it can be 90 degrees and the next day it'll literally snow. So, and then I grew up here. We moved here when I was 6. I grew up in the Phoenix area in the 70s. I went to Brophy Prep. I don't know if there's any Broncos out there, people that know Brophy, but it's been a while. I graduated in 79. But after that, I wanted to see 4 seasons. I wanted to see snow. I hadn't seen snow since I was in Denver. Although there was one time we went for a visit in June, middle of June in 1974. And I saw snow in middle of June, just 2 weeks before my birthday. So that was pretty exciting too. So I decided I wanted to leave the state and go to college. So I went to Penn State University. So if there's any Nittany Lions out there, welcome here. So I was there in the 80s. And then once I left there, I took some more classwork later on at San Jose State University in the 90s. After I graduated from Penn State, I did go in the Air Force. I was an aviation forecaster. Then I went and worked in the private sector. I actually went back to Colorado and worked at base weather as a contractor there. And then I went to work in a shipping industry as a company called Ocean Routes, W&I Ocean Routes. And we did weather forecasting and ship routing for shipping vessels all over the world, including those huge container ships. You may remember the one recently, the one got stuck in the Suez Canal because they said the weather is unusual. Well, to tell you the truth, weather isn't that unusual. We sent ships through the Suez Canal all the time, so and all over the world. And then after that, I got into weather service finally in 2001, and I started out in Fairbanks. I was actually in the Air Force in Fairbanks doing another kind of job. I like Fairbanks. I like Alaska. You can tell I do like some cold weather. So I was up there for 2001 to 2005. And then I came down back to the lower 48 and worked in the San Francisco Bay Area at a center, what they call a center weather service unit. It is we were in the same building as one of these, there's 21 air route traffic control centers around the country that basically, once the plane gets to cruising altitude, they're responsible to get to the plane to its destination. So we provided weather support for the controllers. Of course, our big deal there was at SFO Airport. You ever gone at SFO? There are delays all the time, right? Because of low ceilings, they only have 2 parallel runways. And if the ceilings get too low, they don't have a third alternative, so they have to cut their so-called arrival rate in half. And as you can imagine, that causes delay. So, you know, we were the ones that had to tell them, when is it going to clear? When's it going to clear? And that was pretty challenging because 15, 30 minutes off, it made a world of difference between people arriving on time and then they're having to build a ground delay program, holding planes in the air and everything else. So, and then finally, I came here in 2012 and I've been at the Phoenix office ever since. So I've been doing this work for over 30 years, so a pretty long lived with it. I've been in a weather service for over 20 years now. So go ahead. So as far as Skywarn is concerned, it's got quite a history. It started out during the war that they stood up spotter networks to basically protect weapons depots from lightning and severe weather. And then after the war, the first use of actually Tinker Air Force Base is still the military that they used spotters there to issue the first ever tornado warning and allowed the aircraft at that base to be moved to shelter in time. And as it continued on for the 50s and 60s, you can see the different events there. In 1955, they had the Kansas area, the Weather Bureau began to use spotters as volunteers as weather spotters. And in those days, really, we didn't have the technology to really warn in advance of a tornado. It was kind of just warn on site and at Tinker. So basically, if you have a network of spotters and the tornado is upwind of your Air Force base, and you happen to have a spotter up there, seeing it heading towards base, that's the warning they got in those days. Of course, things are a little bit different now. And then in the late 50s, it was actually started the first formal spotter classes in Kansas. There were over 200 attendees. And then after the Palm Sunday tornado outbreak in '65, that's when we formalized the program and it came part as the National Disaster Warning System. So it's been a long and very useful thing. It's been around for 80 years now, basically, going on 80 years. So we'll go ahead and go into the next slide. So this slide here is kind of what a spotter was like in the 40s and 50s and kind of what they did. Go ahead and play.
We're missing the audio. We're not hearing the audio.
Coffee, Jacob. We've been standing there for half an hour.
Bring it over here, Ellen. You better keep an eye on these clouds.
The least you can do is now.
Thanks, Ellen. Keep watching your southwest side where most of them come from.
Think it's likely?
No, the odds are way against it, even in weather like this. I've never seen one, but there's always a chance. Weather Bureau wouldn't issue a tornado alert without a good reason. Operator, this is an emergency call. I want the Elmville Weather Bureau, main 2100. This is Tornado on a mile east of Lincoln Pumping Station. Moving fast, 0 way, northeast. There's the farmers touching the ground. Yes, that day, Elmville was struck by a tornado. Most violent type of storm on Earth. Normally, we can expect about 180 tornadoes each year in the United States. They can occur anywhere in the nation. However, the greatest number occur in the flat land areas east of the Rocky Mountains. Each individual tornado is a violent local vortex in the atmosphere. The tornado's parent is a thundercloud, and the vortex suddenly descends to rotate wildly along the Earth in an upward spiraling motion. The funnel consists of air and moisture to which dust, mud, and debris are added by the inrushing winds, estimated to be rotating at speeds as high as 500 miles an hour. Tornadoes are usually funnel-shaped, although they may take the form of a rope, an elephant trunk, or although its sweep is generally only about 400 yards wide and up to 16 miles long, a tornado's destructive power is appalling. Strong buildings are reduced to rubble, automobiles lifted and flung through the air, great trees whirled about like toothpicks. The creation of a partial vacuum within the vortex can cause buildings literally to explode when the funnel passes close to them. No one knows all the facts about tornadoes, but meteorologists can detect the thunderstorm conditions that give birth to them. The presence of layers of air of contrasting temperature, moisture, density, and wind flow. Such combinations of conditions may generate a tornado. Usually this does not happen. But when the clouds become unusually threatening, it is wise to take every possible precaution. That calls for forewarning. And it is the responsibility of the United States Weather Bureau to provide the public with information regarding the possibility of severe local storms, including tornadoes. Such advance notice can save many lives and even help reduce property damage. To forecast the development of dangerous conditions, the Weather Bureau has established the Severe Local Storm Warning Center at Kansas City. The staff which mans this office specializes in forecasting storm conditions, not only for the Kansas City area, but for all parts of the country. Local conditions on which these men base their predictions are fed into the center constantly by thousands of observation posts across the continent. From local Weather Bureau offices come reports of surface weather conditions. Upper air conditions, which may be very different from those on the ground, are checked by weather balloons. Radar stations scan cloud formations at varying altitudes to detect dense moisture patterns, the beginning of bad weather as a rule. Specially equipped Air Force and Navy weather reconnaissance planes fly far beyond the continental limits to secure information on incoming weather. All of these observations are funneled into the Kansas City Center, along with nationwide weather charts prepared at the Bureau's Analysis Center in Washington and transmitted by facsimile. Piecing together all this information, the staff prepares a detailed analysis of areas in which violent squall lines, hailstorms, and other dangerous weather conditions are likely to occur, where a tornado may develop. But to see it, if it actually does develop, the Weather Bureau needs the help of the other vital link in the network, the volunteer observer group. In Elmville, for example, the head of the local Weather Bureau had organized an observer network 2 years before the tornado struck. The first purpose of the Observer Corps was to spot actual tornado clouds and advise the Weather Bureau of their location and movement. Another aim was to inform the public about safe behavior during storms, about avoiding false rumors and panic. In the Elmville network, Trained observers were stationed about 2 miles apart, with the heaviest concentration southwest of the city. All were pledged to watch any questionable weather, to report promptly to the Weather Bureau any dangerous-looking storms. One of them was Jesse Brown, whose farm was located southwest of Elmville. One warm, muggy day in May, the forecasters in the Kansas City Center became concerned about conditions in an area to the southwest. These men have a heavy responsibility. They cannot needlessly alarm the public. But when loss of life may be possible, their duty is clear. In this case, they felt that severe storm activity might be expected to the southwest, in an area 160 miles long and 80 miles wide. The Weather Bureau office responsible for distributing warnings in that area was Elmville. The district forecaster in Kansas City immediately called the Elmville Weather Bureau.
There will probably be several of them in your area before the afternoon. 50 west of Austin, northeastward.
A severe weather forecast was issued for the Elmville area. All public outlets were advised. Police, radio and television stations, and news networks, and the Elmville Observer Network was alerted. This was not a tornado warning. Its purpose was merely to alert the public to the possibility of a tornado occurring somewhere in the Elmville area.
Watch.
To bring you the severe weather forecast issued by the United States Weather Bureau at Elmville. There are indications that locally severe thunderstorms will southward back to the west border of Austin. Within this area, and the public reacted calmly. They had learned from the network's information program that this alert meant only that storm conditions existed, that no tornado had yet developed. They knew that experienced observers were at their stations watching, that if and when a tornado developed, they would be warned. So they went about their business as usual, except that practically every radio and TV set in the area was turned on. Mid-afternoon, towering thunderhead had appeared, with a sickly, greenish black color. On Jesse Brummett's farm, a heavy rain was falling, and he came indoors to watch from his kitchen. Then, at 3:26, tornadoes on a mile east of Wind Public Station. Mile east of Wind Pumping Station. Looks like a bad one. Okay, we'll take it from there. This was it. Brummett's call gave Elmville nearly 30 minutes to get ready. Howell and his assistants issued an immediate tornado warning to all communities in the path of the storm. The exact location of the tornado was flashed to the nearest radar station, which began to track it. What they saw were echoes from a number of storms over a radius of many miles. But most important, the peculiar S-shaped echo of the tornado cloud Brummet had spotted. Now, they could follow its path and report any change of speed or direction. Meanwhile, warned by television, radio, and telephone, the public followed tornado safety rules. Those with storm cellars had the best protection. People in open country sought pitches or ravines. Lying flat in a depression will guard against one of the greatest hazards, flying debris as deadly as shrapnel. In homes, doors and windows on the north and east sides were open to help reduce damage to the buildings.
actually found out.
Families took shelter in the southwest corner of their homes, in basement if they had them. In apartments, office buildings, and factories, people moved to prearranged positions against inside walls on the lower floors. And in schools, because of practice drills, the pupils went to their assigned places on the lower floors, away from windows and large roof areas. Within minutes, the people of Elmville had taken shelter. There was no panic, for this was an informed community. The tornado roared into the city. Then it was gone, as suddenly as it came. The wind shifted and the air cleared over a scene of devastation. Property damage totaled millions of dollars, but no lives were lost, and there were few injuries. Without the Weather Bureau warning, without the local storm warning network, without the calm cooperation of an informed public, the toll might have been tragically high. Nothing can prevent a tornado or any other storm, but the United States Weather Bureau is predicting their approach with ever-increasing accuracy. A large part of the tornado safety program is in the hands of the public. Every community in an area subject to these storms should have an active local warning network. If you live in such an area, support your local network. If you don't have one, start one. The nearest Weather Bureau office will furnish detailed information and assistance. Such self-reliance may save the lives of your family, your friends, and your neighbors. If you are entering the path of the tornado.
So yeah, that is from, I guess, from the 50s, what it looks like. So it's quite a while ago. So we've been doing this for a while. So on to who we are, the National Weather Service. Who are we? We're a federal agency. We're federal government employees. You know, part of that check you write every April 15th goes to us. Our budget is maybe a bit over $1 billion now for the total budget, which works out to about $3 for each man, woman, and child in this country. I don't think that's very much, you know, to have what we do for the cost of less. You can't even get a cup of, I can't even get my Americano at Starbucks anymore for that. So, so that's what we are. We're responsible for the entire country. There's 122 local forecast offices across the lower 48, Alaska, Hawaii, also Puerto Rico, Guam, and also at American Samoa. So anything that's American soil, we provide weather forecasts for. We have a river forecast centers, our national centers. You may be familiar with the Storm Prediction Center, the Weather Prediction Center, of course, the National Hurricane Center. And then there's 21 of our center weather service units that I work at as well, which is one I did. So go on to the next. And here's a map of our locations of all our forecast offices. These were decided upon their physical locations depending on and during the modernization of the 80s and 90s when the 88D Doppler radars were brought online. And each of these offices, including us, is responsible for at least one radar. We have two. We have, of course, the radar at Gateway Airport, south of Gateway Airport, if you ever go down there in Sauceman's Drive. And then we also have the one in Yuma that we take care of the forecast for Southwest Arizona and Southeast California. So you can see the whole country, there's quite a few of us. Go ahead.
How far do those radars reach out?
You know, you can detect stuff up to 200 miles, but in practicality, you know, maybe 100 miles. Of course, as the beam progresses away from the radar, it gets higher and higher. So of course, as they say, there's more and more under the radar. So the thing that's nice is that we can tie the network of radars together, and practically the whole country can be seen by at least some of the radars. And sometimes we can even use, for example, one part of our forecast area is up in southern Gila County. You know those fires last year, those big bird scars that were generated by those fires and the flooding. So in some respects, the Flagstaff radar was actually more useful to determine rainfall rates than our own, because it was actually closer. And also with the higher elevation, it was the beam was basically closer to the storms out there in the surface. So here's a map of our forecast area. One of the larger ones in the lower 48. It goes all the way from southern Gila County through south central Arizona, all over Phoenix Metro, and then out in southeast California for all of Imperial in the eastern part of Riverside County, and also Joshua Tree National Park, and then southwest or northwest Pinal County too. Pinal County is split between us and Tucson, and Gila County is split between us and Flagstaff. And then the rest of most of northern Arizona is Flagstaff's responsibility. And then Vegas covers Mojave County. So maybe some of you guys remember years ago, before the modernization, the Phoenix office used to be responsible for the whole state of Arizona, but that changed, of course. So, and then as you go into San Diego and LA and the adjacent offices, so we got a pretty big forecast area. And as far as our services are concerned, hazardous weather is our big business. We're the ones that issue the official warnings, watches, and advisories that you get on your phone, or you might see on TV or other broadcast media on social media. We provide 7-day forecasts, sometimes even longer. Text and graphics, our computer models are getting better and better in terms of accuracy out further. Aviation, we're responsible for the aviation forecast for all the major airports and many of the smaller ones here. We put out specialized terminal aviation forecasts. Any of you pilots, you guys fly license? We would provide the forecast, for example, Sky Harbor, Scottsdale. We have a forecast, a terminal aviation forecast. It's a text forecast for Gateway Airport, and then Deer Valley, and also Blythe and Imperial. So these are forecasts that forecast winds, ceiling heights, visibility, precipitation, occurrence of thunderstorms and other things. So they go out 24 to 36 hours. So they're very important. The airlines use them for planning for fuel loading. And it's being more and more important. It kind of used to be that the first 6 hours we focus on exclusively, but with the accuracy increasing, and also the the fact that we have international flights now. Phoenix has an international flight, of course, the British Air flight that comes in every day from Heathrow. So some of these flights, in terms of fuel loading, they're so long that they rely on the information we provide more toward the end of our forecast. So it's kind of important to tell them, as you know, from an airline standpoint of view, you don't want to put too much fuel on a plane because it's too heavy and it burns more fuel, right? And of course, you know what happens if there's too little, and you got all kinds of problems then. So we provide that for private pilots, air traffic controllers, and these CWSUs. We're face to face with the traffic management or controllers. If there's, for example, if a controller is monitoring a plane, that's what they file VFR. In other words, they don't have the instrument, maybe a small Cessna or something like that, that relies on actual visuals, and they fly in an area that has what they call IFR conditions, like fog or heavy precipitation. They can come to me and say, well, what's the quickest way to get this plane back out of these conditions and in the clear, or if they're in icy, should they go up and down, that sort of thing. And then fire weather, very important fire weather. We provide the fire weather forecasts. We provide specialized spot forecasts for specific fires. We even send meteorologists out in deployments to brief the fire crews face to face. Hydrological, we issue our flash flood warnings, our water supply outlooks, river stage forecasts. And then we're becoming more involved in what we call decision support services, DSS. We might provide weather support through government agencies like the Super Bowl, the Final Four. If there's some sort of hazardous waste spill, train derailment. Remember, you guys remember that train derailment a couple years ago in Tempe on the Tempe Bridge? We would immediately call. I was working that day. First problem was that that the smoke from it, they were concerned about Sky Harbor. And normally the winds in the morning go from east to west. So normally the smoke would have been carried over the airport, but that morning it was coming from west to east, and they were just, they would rely on us to find out, is this going to remain the case, or are we going to have to, or is it going to switch? And then we're going to have all kinds of problems at the airport. And then, of course, in terms of the situation south, providing weather support for the cleanup. There have been fires, in terms of wind direction, whether certain areas might have to be evacuated and so on. And in something like a big or presidential visits, we provide specialized weather support for them. And the last thing was, there were 24/7, 365. We never close. Weather, never takes a day off. And if you call us, unlike some of these other entities where you might get a reporting saying your call is very important, well, to us, your call is very important. You'll get an actual person there, the other one in the line. So, anyways, go ahead. And so, why do we need these guys? Why do you guys need these storm spotters? So go ahead and to fulfill our mission, just like the video is showing. Back in those days, what they did is they issue watches. These are areas where their conditions atmospherically were favorable for tornadoes, but we didn't have the technology yet. But still, even today, with all the cool technology, it has its limitations. So we still need you. Go ahead. You provide us the ground truth. You tell us what's going on of hazardous weather conditions. You can provide critical information that only people can provide. Your eyes, ears. Storm damage, size of hail. We'll see a storm and it's got hail and a hail signature, right? And we might put a warning out for large hail, but we rely on you to tell you how large it is. Tornado touchdown, visual storm clues, because there are different types of warnings. Like recently with the severe storm warnings with the hail, we have more of an upgraded version that's sent out on your phones. In the past, severe thunderstorm warnings were not put on your phones. The ones here locally are the dust storm warnings, the flash flood warnings. That's what tornado warnings go out on your phones, but we have one now. If the hail is baseball size or larger, it'll go out on your phone. So we need to know from spotters whether it's baseball or if it's just golf ball. So that's why we still need you. Go ahead. You're filling gaps in the observation networks, especially in the outlying areas. We're always looking for spotters in places, like Globe or out there in Quartzsite, or the outer skirts of the Phoenix area, Pinell County. So how do we use these reports? It's part of our warning decision process. You saw that kind of in the video where they spot a report, and then in combination with the radar, decide to issue a tornado warning. So it confirms or revises your forecast, prevents the issues of new warnings, and it also alerts the general public, because these go out to emergency management. They go all over the media, so you get, especially social media today, so broadcast media, and all becomes part of our climate database. So we can track trends, say severe thunderstorm winds or tornadoes or even hail size over time. Go ahead. So in terms of the numbers of spotters, these are kind of old numbers, I admit, but I'm sure they've grown. But you can see back then there was 350 to 400,000 spotters. There's a lot of you guys out there. There's a lot of spotters out there. And these are the numbers we train nationwide. Every weather service office has its own spotter training program. And we put on these classes, and of course they're tailored to the climatology of the area. Like, here we talk a lot about dust storms. We don't talk much about blizzards, but in Fairbanks, it was the opposite. There were dust storms there, but there did have the number of blizzards. So it's, in terms of what office you do, you basically assigned the office according to where your home address is, wherever. So, we get questions that a lot of times spotters have second homes up in the mountains and stuff like that. And actually, they may end up taking both us and flight staff, depending on how long they live up there. And so it's quite large and getting larger every year. So go ahead. So on to the next thing is our lower desert. What kind of weather hazards we have here? Are you guys all longtime residents? We got new ones or snowbirds in here? Maybe not, but you're longtime residents, so you kind of have an idea of what the weather's like around here, right? So we have two seasons, a cool season and a warm season, or some people say a hot, not so hot season. But, anyways, we have different kinds of weather. So go ahead and go on. First of all, we'll cover the cool season, which of course we're leaving now, but what happens here? Well, the widespread rain events, not too much this year, but leading to flash flooding, and sometimes we get main stem river flooding. Hail, it's most likely to occur in the deserts during the cool season, not because the storms are stronger, actually they're weaker, lower top, they have less energy, but the freezing levels are much lower. Here in the summer months, our freezing levels typically 15 to 18,000 feet. That's a long way for a chunk of ice to get to the ground without melting completely, even if it's a large one. But in the winter time, of course, it can be, it'll be much lower, maybe just a couple thousand feet out of the ground at some time. So that allows these hailstones to reach the ground. Graupel, it's even snow occur, which is very rare unless you live in far north Scottsdale. Anybody live up there in 2019 when you got snow up there? Though rare tornadoes can occur in the desert, January through March, September and October. And then, of course, our windy season. We're going through that right now, especially this year, April. So here's a video that I talked about main stem river flooding. You guys ever remember this? Go ahead.
That is the greatest flow on record. As a matter of fact, New Albany Bridge and Central Avenue Bridge have the capacity known standard flow of 170 to 180,000 feet per second. But the main problem that people seem to be concerned about right now is how to get home. It's the blue as in following the traffic situation, you can tell us right now.
An hour ago, we reported at 5 o'clock that there were 5 bridges open. As of now, there are only 3 bridges open. The only bridges open across the Salt River are the Middle Avenue, the Central Avenue, and the I-10 bridge. The 80 Road crossing and the crossing at Scottsdale Road have both been closed. That just within the last hour. At this point, traffic is already seriously backed up. Ways are out trying to control it as much as possible. But so far, it does not look good as far as getting home. There's going to be a long delay. If you haven't left yet, you might consider waiting a little bit longer because it's going to open at this point to get more people on the road. We're trying to set up reversible lanes on the Central Avenue Bridge. That will probably be one of the best routes to get to work. However, if they do go above the 170 to 180 range, they put the question mark as to how good those bridges are going to be come Monday. Right now, traffic is bad. As far as how things are going to go on Monday.
So some of you guys remember the flooding of the 70s here, and that was the big one there when we almost had our Katrina there when almost overtopped Roosevelt Dam. That's why they raised the dam level in the 90s. Of course, we had another series of it in 93. I wasn't living here. But what had happened is there was a series of storms just kept coming into Arizona, dumping all the kinds of rain. And there was one more storm, and they thought that was going to come in and that was going to push it over the top, but it didn't. It weakened and fell apart. But if that had happened and topped Roosevelt Dam, of course, as you know, it's one furthest upstream, it would have swept through all the rest of them. And I remember I was at Penn State at the time. I came a week after it, and there was this in the Arizona Republic, this map of how it would have just gone around South Mountain and made South Mountain an island. So, and 200,000, the governor was almost ready to evacuate 200,000 people. Some of you guys might remember that. So, and then of course, earlier in the 70s, there were several others. So, and in 93, there was more floods. So just because it hasn't rained doesn't mean it can't. I mean, we go through these cycles. To go on to the next one here. So as far as hail is concerned, this is how it is. You get these thunderstorms, very strong updrafts. The raindrops get pulled up into the updrafts and they go above the freezing level. And what you have is ice crystals up there, super cool water drops, and they begin to accrete on them. And then the downdrafts brings them down and it just cycles it up and up more and more, and until they get too heavy and fall to the ground. So that's how hail is formed. Go on to the next one. You get a lot of questions in winter months here. What is GRAPO about winter precip and telling the difference? And the Chicago office came up with a pretty good graphic. GRAPO is basically kind of a hailstorm stone that's just starting out, I guess. You know, it's snowflakes that accrete super cool water droplets. We see this in the winter time when it's still above freezing here in the valley, but they get tossed up and down, and they get large enough that they can reach the ground, and they fall, and they actually kind of look like snow, but they're kind of big chunks of fluffy, soft, rime ice that hit the ground. And of course, that was that one in Scottsdale, and in 2013 when it covered it, and up there in 101. So that's something we see a fair bit here. Hail is, of course, the ball of ice that can form in summer or winter. It requires much stronger updrafts to get those more solid chunks of ice. And then sleet, not something we hear much ever at all. But if you come from other parts of the country, what happens there is that you have a snowflake, falls out of the cloud into a warm layer below the cloud. But then as it comes down near the ground, there's still cold air trapped. A lot of times you'll get that like the Appalachian Mountains, like State College, where Penn State is in a valley. They call it Happy Valley. That's what we used to call it, Happy Valley. And so the cold air gets trapped in there. And so you have below freezing air, maybe 1,000 feet thick. So the raindrop gets super cool, hits the ground. And then if it's not that deep, it'll become freezing rain. But if it's deeper, which often happens in State College, it would freeze into a little ball of ice. So it's almost like you're getting pelted with like these BBs kind of thing coming down to the ground. So that's the difference between, certainly between guapo and snowflakes. Snowflakes, of course, are still crystalline. They don't melt. They make it all the way down to the surface, and you need temperatures at or very near freezing all the way from the cloud base to the surface to get that snowflake down. So we'll go to the next one. Here's something here that y'all might remember a little more recently. Go back there. Yeah, just go ahead. And then I think that the sound is over on the right there.
Better restart that, sorry.
See, that's the October 5th, 2010 hailstorm. That's hail the size of baseballs. We had that special severe thunderstorm when we would have issued it that day. The most destructive hailstorm in American history in terms of damage claims. That's really shocking because in the years I grew up in Phoenix, I never saw anything bigger than peas. And I just never thought that you'd even be capable, but that nevertheless it occurred. So most damaging one. So you would have thought Denver, Dallas, Oklahoma City, maybe Birmingham, Alabama, or something like that. I mean, they get clocked there, but no, it's here. So that was quite a hailstorm there. Tornadoes on that subject here. So go ahead. Arizona's, we get about 5 a year. In 2010, we had at least 10. The next day or the next morning was the big outbreak in Flagstaff's area. The night before was the hailstorm here. The next morning, they had ones F3 tornadoes up there, one within less than a mile of the forecast office. So Tornado Alley, I guess up there is Belmont, Arizona. There was actually a tornado outbreak in the 50s up there too. So they tend to be weak. Usually they're zeros and ones. They tend to be short-lived, as you know. Sometimes they don't even touch, well, of course they don't touch the ground. They're not a tornado. Pass on ground or less than a mile. And again, we have the fajita sale that rates it according to damage. And now one thing about that video mentioned the wind speeds in the tornado up to 500 miles an hour. It's not quite that strong. It's 200, but 200 miles an hour is still enough to make your life pretty miserable.
Is a dust devil considered a tornado?
No, it's not. It's not attached to a thunderstorm. It's simply a vortex of really hot, superheated air near the ground that rises very rapidly and gets spun up. Although there's been dust devils that have done damage like small tornadoes, but they're not tornadoes. They're not formed in the same way. They're under perfectly clear skies, in hot conditions. So, go ahead. As far as our summer concerns here, our heat, dust storms, downbursts, flash lightning on very rare occasion, tornadoes. Heat, we just think of it's here, like death in Texas, heat in Phoenix, but it's becoming it is the #1 weather-related killer around the country. And it's becoming an increasingly problem here. The combination of the warmer temperatures, the urban heat island, the expansion of the city, socioeconomic issues that are coming in the last few years. People not affordable housing, places like that to go in the summer. So it's becoming a very great problem. So go on to the next one here. So what is a monsoon? First of all, it's a seasonal reversal in prevailing weather. Now, was there stuff before that, or? No, I guess not. So monsoon is a seasonal reversal in prevailing flow wet patterns. It used to be defined as when the dew point reached 55 or greater for 3 consecutive days on average. We changed that to a calendar base, because of course we can get monsoon type storms without dew points that high, and a lot of times we don't without. And so really it's kind of the occurrence of it. Now naturally, some people say, well, June we get very little rain, but when we do get rain events, it is similar to the monsoon. There it may be starting a little early through September 30th. It's part of the North American monsoon, which is a large scale feature, the little brother of the Southeast Asian monsoon. If anybody were deployed in the military to Southeast Asia, you know what the weather is like there. It goes from absolutely dry, bone dry dust to torrential rains day after day. We're not quite in that league, but it's enough of a change here to definitely be noticeable. Let's go on to the next one. In terms of what happens, it's a wind pattern change in May and June, as we're now, of course. This subtropical high that typically hangs out to our south, it's still south over Mexico there. Our winds are still southwest aloft. Unfortunately, the Pacific systems that bring our rain are far to the north. So now it's a dry flow, and it's just getting, gradually hotter every day. And then finally in July, this shifts north, and the winds turn from the southwest to the south and southeast, and they bring moisture in, both from the Pacific and from the Gulf of Mexico. And that's what provides us the moisture to trigger our storms. Next one. Now on the heat. So anyways, here's weather-related deaths in Arizona, and you see, the various amounts there, flood and lightning warning in the last 10 years. Now, where do you think heat would fall? Do you think it would be less, or do you think it would just be a tiny bit more, or what? As you can see, 35 is the winter so far with the flood. So you think, yeah, see what it is, 3,000. So and over the years, it's growing. So that's why we're becoming more and more emphasis on the heat, or heat products, or heat warnings. We're working with the cities, in terms of mitigation efforts. A lot of times we issue excessive heat warnings They set up water stations and cooling stations. The utilities will suspend disconnections at that point. So it's becoming more and more of an issue here. So on to the next thing. Here's another thing, downbursts, where you have thunderstorms, and they basically have updrafts that bring moisture up, and the downbursts that, as you can see, hit the ground and spread out. And these are what generate are very strong winds, are blowing dust, and actually the most damaging aspect of storms, more than. This is real time. This is one of our spotters, Brian Snyder, that took this video of it. This is actually out in the Tucson area, is where he showed that video there.
That's better.
It's better, yes. Yeah, it's better. Okay, and then go to the next one. The next hazard here, blowing dust. As you can see, it's not so bad right now, but as you know, things change quickly around here. Very, very quickly. There's so going here, and then boom, literally can happen this fast. So what is he doing? He's pulling off there, the road, which is what you should be doing, and to get off the road. Now he's stopped. But what didn't he do? He didn't turn his lights off. That's right. It's one of the essential things, because if you don't, and get your foot off the brake, otherwise people think you're on the road and rear end you. So that's certainly one of our hazards. Going to the next one is flooding, flash flooding. Now this is a flash flood. I think it's in the canyons of southern Utah there. The storm was 40 miles away. Of course, it didn't rain or anything like that, but it came down this canyon. So can you imagine if you're a camper or riding a horse or something like that? Yeah, you don't want to do that. That terrible tragedy up in Payson a couple of years ago, there were storms on the rim, and it came down through that canyon into that creek there. And unfortunately, because of the canyon they didn't get cell phone reception. So they weren't able to be warned. Now, one of the things up in the Oak Creek Canyon is they have sirens that they can turn on so that to alert people if there's flash flooding down there. But unfortunately, there wasn't. So that's certainly a hazard here. Go ahead. And then just go ahead. So lightning safety. Lightning is not something we essentially warn about, because in order for a thunderstorm to exist, it has to have lightning. Otherwise, it's not a thunderstorm. But there's still safety issues. When thunder roars, go indoors. You know the safety rules. You know, and we talked about things like you shouldn't be taking showers in the rain, or doing cooking or anything like that. How about using your cell phone? Do you think it's safe to pick up your cell phone and call somebody if there's a storm outside? Definitely not the ham radio, but the cell phone. You think it's okay? Actually, it is, because there's no wire. It's wireless. Same thing with a wireless PC. But the moment you plug it into the wall, well, lightning can hit your house or your office and come right in, unless you've got some sort of lightning suppression system. So, and of course, if you're outside, you want to be in ramadas, you know, or patios or anything like that. You want to get in a substantial structure. How about your car? Is that a good place to be in a storm? Yes, it is. The metal takes the electricity around and it goes to the ground. How about a convertible? No, not even with it, unless it's got a hardtop convertible. If you're lucky or wealthy enough to own a hardtop convertible, it's not going to work. I think so. It's a football game. Yeah. Actually, I think it's volunteer. It's Virginia Tech, so it's not an ASU game. So go on to the next one here. Tornadoes in the summer. Now, it's something, a lot of people say, "Thank you guys, old timers." 1972, the summer 1972, we had 7 confirmed tornadoes in what is the metro area. These were actually the most significant one was the ones that hit Scottsdale on the 21st of June, 1972. There were 2 of them up there. One came up as an F2 that damaged hundreds of homes. The next morning, on the 22nd, was the flooding that came down Indian Bend Wash that flooded so many houses that's why they decided at that point to make it the green belt it's today. So that's why you can go out there and go running and riding your bikes and feeding ducks and stuff like that. And they're not going to build houses there anymore because that was a flooding that day. So that was maybe that was probably one of the most notable severe weather events here in the valley in history. And some of you might remember that. I was only 11, but I'm still old enough to remember.
Based on your wind chart earlier, I would say that the Scottsdale one, the touchdown was where the tornado is, and
Yeah.
it moved north.
And it moved north, yeah. So the origination point, and then it was away from the origination point.
So why is there no movement for the other ones? It's so short-lived.
Short-lived, yeah. But they made a touchdown very briefly, with like the one in Mesa. In Mesa, that was not far from my house. And as you can see some of the others, there's actually a longer track on there. It's just an X-zero down there. But you can see the sediment room there in what was populated areas. That was an exceptional summer, and it can happen here. That's one of the reasons why we classified late June as part of our monsoon season, because once in a while you get these kind of things. Usually what happens is kind of a hybrid. We have like an upper low sitting off the coast that pulls moisture in, but then you get the storm development that's similar, the hazards, the dust storms, the heavy rains, the flooding, all that stuff. So that's kind of a historical perspective here of what will happen. Here's a picture of the actual damage from that tornado at Scottsdale. You can see it was pretty significant. Not need to see how hit and miss it is at some of these houses. Were Cactus Road, where a couple were destroyed, and others were basically left untouched. But that's the nature of tornadoes. So I don't know how many houses are up there now on Cactus Road. Yeah. So that was June 21st. So we were coming on the 50th anniversary of this event. So, go to the next slide there. So started our Skywarn program now. Enjoy. Well, these are all the folks who enjoy police, for fire personnel. A lot of emergency managers encourage their city employees to take their classes. Dispatchers. We have actually had specialized dispatcher training, EMS workers, public utility, and of course private citizens. And you guys, the amateur radio operators, and many more. So that was me at one of the Queen Creek ones. All of ours right now are still virtual, but we probably will bring some in-person ones back. I hope we do. I really miss the contact, and I know that some people prefer the virtual too. I think we should have both. But as far as our training, it's held every year between early March and early June. It's happening right now. We have a class actually just ended. It's probably just ended now. There's one tomorrow night. 1 hour virtual basic class, no cost. You take it every 2 years to remain current. And there's an advanced class as well that we hold at least one a year. It's 2 hours long. So those are some of the photos of some of the other classes we did in Gilbert there. So on to the next one here. In terms of signing up for our classes, you just Google, weather.gov/Phoenix. So you just do NWS Phoenix, and you can go to our homepage here, and then you go ahead and click on that. And what you do is, if you go on to the next thing, is you go into local programs, and then down there, and it goes local programs, and then it's got Skywarn there, and you go on to that, and then it brings up a list of classes. We can show a more current one now as well. In fact, you could pull it up if you want at the end of this. And then also what we call reportable phenomena. These are ones that we need our spotters to tell us about, that we could issue severe weather warnings on it. So those are the ones at least. And every office is a little different. Of course, for us, for any kind of snow is so remarkable, so unusual, that we like to hear about it. But if you live in Buffalo, New York, you're going to call the weather, Buffalo Weather Service, they're saying snow, they laugh at you. So our Skywarn net here, got advertisement. We got Sector 2 and Sector 6 here that you guys are involved in. Sector 2 is Wednesdays at 8 p.m. And Sector 6 is Tuesday Actually, the one, sector 2 is only once a month now. So sector 6, I believe, is every week still. And then if you live in Unionwood, it's also that as well. I am the ham radio contact, so if you have any questions about that or anything else, you're welcome to contact me there. Marvin Percha, NOAA.gov, KI7BLU. Occasionally, I am on the nets if I'm working from the office. I live in Queen Creek, I live in an HOH, so I can't put antennas or anything like that. I just have a handheld. You know, I don't really get the greatest reception, but in the office, we've got a pretty good setup. Have any of you participated in our Skywarn recognition days that we have once a year? Now, last 2 have been different because we can't allow people in the office, but in the past, they're in December and you can actually come in and get contacts. We had 2-hour shifts. The last 2 years, what we've done is we spun up a virtual net so that spotters could call in their reports, basically what was actually going on that day, and call them in, kind of practice. We'll probably do that again next year. I'll try to make sure and advertise that. And so, any questions? Any things about weather? Go ahead.
How long does it take all those big tornadoes to stand up?
Sometimes just a few minutes. 20 minutes, 30 minutes at most, depending on the atmospheric conditions. They can come very quickly. So.
What about microbursts?
That's even quicker. That's 5 to 10 minutes. Because what happens is you get this big updraft that pushes up through the cloud. And if it's strong enough, it causes what we call an elevated area of reflectivity. It's basically pushing all that water, all that ice way up, and it can actually cause what we call an overshooting top. Normally, when you go up through, if you go up through the atmosphere, it gets cold, right? If you go to Flagstaff, it's colder. If you get on a plane, it's even colder at flight level. But when you get in the stratosphere, it starts to warm. So what happens is an air parcel just keeps rising until it hits the tropopause, the boundary between the troposphere and the stratosphere, and then normally it just goes down. But if you have a strong enough updraft, it kind of just punches through like maybe like a running back might be able to punch through the line for a moment before they push it back. So what happens is the momentum is pushed up and then down, and it's thrust toward their surface, and it's cooler than its environment as it gathers more ice and more rain, water droplets, especially here in the Southwest where it's still dry. And once it comes to the subcloud environment, it's really getting colder, and the colder air is heavier and it sinks and hits the surface. That whole process can take less than 10 minutes. We can infer from radar, but in terms of the spotters and what's actually going on the ground, that's what we rely on. Because our radar beams actually angle up as you go out. By the time our radar beam gets out to Surprise, Sun City area, it's several thousand people on the ground. So yeah, that's a very quick process, and that's one of the most difficult things to warn on, that's for sure.
We got a thing was described as a heat burst.
A heat burst, yeah, actually those exist. What it is in that case, what happens is you have a collapsing thunderstorm there, and instead of it maybe it's just not a lot of moisture, or the cloud base is so high, is instead of staying cooler, it gets compressed and becomes, by the time it reaches the ground, it's actually warmer than its environment, so that all of a sudden you get this big temperature rise for a few minutes, and we've experienced that. I was actually out running once in the late evening. I'm a runner, so I was actually running out the office, and it was one of these that happened, and this big burst of wind hit me, and it's just like this hot blast. It literally happened. So, in some cases, they're not quite so dramatic here as they are in the Midwest, where you might have a temperature go from 80 to 100 or something like that in the middle of the night. So, yeah. Any questions?
It was years ago, maybe say going back to the 50s, maybe earlier. Was it? My impression was that they didn't recognize that we had tornadoes there from time to time.
Yeah, there was some controversy about that. Our first tornado warning was not issued until 1971. Of course, a lot of it is partly to the fact that we had so few people living here, and there's nobody that was there to see one, and the radars weren't good enough to detect them yet. So that's one of the reasons why they didn't think them, because there was just nobody saw them. But as we get more and more people, you know, we see more and more of them. So go ahead.
So what is the frequency, frequency of these radars?
Well, I'm not really sure what the frequency. They're well up in the radio, almost a microwave spectrum is what they are. So they're far above what you're thinking of the frequencies you may monitor in ham radio. Or I'm not sure exactly what they are. It's a good question.
And I'm kind of curious, you were saying it can reach 200 miles. What is the takeoff angle of the radars?
They're set, the lowest angle, they actually kind of go through slices and cuts, but the lowest angle is a half a degree above horizontal. And then it can go up to as much as 11, 13 degrees above horizontal.
So maximum is 13.
Yeah.
In the area, they actually go up and down?
Well, they don't go up and down. It's kind of what they rotate. It's almost like, you know, a spiral sliced ham kind of sort of thing. That's how they go up, and then they go back down, and they come back down and start over. That's what we call a volume scan. So if that whole cycle is a volume scan. What's interesting is that the current next-ride radars, that's in terms of the angle, is done. It's all done automatically. But the older radars, when I was in the Air Force weather, we had these FPS 77 radars, and you could actually interrogate storms manually. You could actually sweep the beam up and down or from side to side, you know. We can't do that. That's one drawback. There is actually, I think, the phased array radar, something we might have someday in the future. We might go do that again. So we'd actually be able to manually interrogate storms. So, yeah.
According to Google, the radars operate between 2.7 and 3.0 meters.
Oh, okay. There you are. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
That's 750,000 watts.
Yeah.
Keep close.
Yeah, so obviously you got a lot of energy coming out of there, so that's why they can, you know, they have to send out enough energies in order they'll detect it coming back. So, any other questions? Any from the folks that are listening?
Do they have an ability to predict the hail very well?
To predict hail, we have some ability in terms, again, what might be favorable conditions for hail. But in terms of what actually happens, we basically we still have to wait for the storms to form. And then once they do form, we can determine the size of hail pretty accurately, you know, on a real-time basis. But it changes so rapidly, it's just a few minutes. I mean, you can have a storm that's intensifying so rapidly that what we call these volume scans take 6 minutes. So volume scan 1 might say that it's estimating 1/2 inch, and by the time it gets to 2, it might be saying 1.5 inches. So we can determine pretty well the sizes of, but you know, in terms of any kind of forewarning, it's still just a few minutes on it. And it's also around here, it's trickier here because it's so warm near the surface. Sometimes we get storms that can look like they have, especially in summer, they can have very large hail, but of course by the time it reaches the ground, it's not much of anything. So yeah.
I remember the 2010, and we were out walking in a parking lot, the GD plant there in Scottsdale, looking north, and that thing developed extremely fast. So
yeah,
I don't know how you could really predict that.
Those storms were during what we call the transition season, when we still have moisture from the tropics and it interacts with these Pacific systems. So the freezing levels were lower then, but there was the dynamics that helped build these storms. I wasn't working here, but I certainly have seen the case studies and the radar imagery, and they were very fast moving storms that day.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thanks, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, back to.
I think the next thing on the agenda is Tom NQ7R will give the club activity report.
Yeah, we can run through those pretty fast, I think. But I actually had a experience about 4 months ago with a microburst. I had a 12 by 12 metal storage shed on my property. And had the storm came through. And after it quit raining, I went out with my flashlight. And all of a sudden I think, what the heck is that? I see this file cabinet sitting in my yard. And then I realized there used to be a shed there. And it ended up over the neighbor's spot. So,
Yeah, you know, you're talking about dust devils. I mean, one of the hazards around here, these bounce houses people set up for their kids' birthday parties. Oh, man, you know, that's.
yeah, and also, I've got a Teledyne T11 log periodic, and it turned it on the rotor about 30 degrees. So later I finally got it cranked down and pinned it. So
Been the needle on the rotary.
yeah, that's right. Anyway, I'll run through these real quick. I mean, you can, I assume you can all read them. But again, we're getting some data in, getting some good numbers. As you can see, Rick has been very active, W0RIC. In fact, if you noticed on the club log thing, he was, for 2022, he's the most active ham in CADXA. And of course, Steve, K7SP, is just wiping everybody out. Mr. DX, he just, I see him on FT8 a lot. And for 50 watts, he certainly works a lot of DX. If you want to go to the next slide, again, this is one of those special things I thought of that most people aren't interested in, but the idea was to work these 15 countries, work them on phone, CW, and digital. And actually, I mean, it would sound pretty easy to do, but at least for me, I haven't done that many and worked all 3 modes. Most of the ones I'm missing are phone, but and 5 Tango 5, I don't think you're going to find him on anything other than digital. But anyway, it was something I came up with, and we'll see how it goes. The HF Marathon, again, we got a nice competition there. Rick and Larry are really pushing the limits on the marathon. Really good scores. And I had a couple of days ago, was on 17, and all of a sudden ST2NH popped up. I couldn't work it, but one of these days I'm going to get zone 34. And of course, zone 2, I should be able to work, but people just haven't been there. The expeditions, I kind of, there's a Svalbard expedition on now. I kind of missed that. I didn't put it in there, but I know the West down in Tucson really enjoys this. And I know I think he worked TX5 and probably 25 times, maybe. He really got into it. and they were very active. Then the last 6 meters, we're still waiting for big openings, and I do my exercise classes in the morning. It seems like I always miss any of the openings. But then the last two, again, one of those wild ideas that I came up with that nobody else is particularly interested in. And the last one, the alphabet soup. I'm still missing Zimbabwe. What I need is Zimbabwe or Zambia, 9J2BO. He gets on pretty often, but the other guys have all gotten all the way through the alphabet. And I did get Qatar for the Q, but Yemen's not likely to be on. So anyway, if you're interested, and send me your data and we'll get it all set up in there. And how many countries do you have now on or how many grids on the satellites?
We're hitting about 65.
Yeah, Tom has been chasing grids on the satellites. So just another example of all the opportunities in ham radio. So many things that nobody should be bored as I am. But anyway, I'll sit down and let you finish up the meeting, Bill.
I think it's pretty much all of the meeting. Anything else we need to go over? Motion to adjourn? Okay, thanks for attending. Everybody on the Zoom call, thanks for attending.